The episode opens in the grimy hold of the refugee freighter, the Long Haul. Feng Zhu sits alone, hood pulled low, a ghost among the living. The air is thick with the anxious chatter of other players, their voices a symphony of mundane tragedies. They mourn lost gear, vanished credits, and wasted progress on the fallen world of verdant promise. Their losses are pixels and data. His is a piece of his soul. On his private display, the same scene plays on a loop, the capture of his ship, the star sickle, and the face of the Dominion commander, Vexor, her ultimatum as cold and sharp as a shard of ice. In the corner of his vision, a timer glows with malevolent red light. 17 hours, 42 minutes, and 11 seconds. Each tick of the clock is a hammer blow against his conscience, a reminder of the impossible choice he faces. Su Ling is in their hands because of him. The scene rips away from the game, cutting to the harsh reality of LIAN Feng's apartment. He stumbles from his gaming pod, the neural feedback from the battle leaving him with a blinding migraine and uncontrollable tremors. His body rebels, and he vomits violently into the sink. The biofeedback from the corruption is getting worse. But even through the pain, his actions are automatic, a sacred ritual. He checks the vital signs on the cryo chamber, adjusts the fluid levels, and sees the notification. The latest payment for his sister's care has gone through. He's succeeded. He's earning the money. But the victory tastes like ash. He looks at his sister May's face, peaceful and still behind the frosted glass. "I found a way to save you," he whispers, his voice raw and broken. "But I might have to become a monster to do it." The line between the game's corruption and his real-world despair is dissolving. He's fighting a war on two fronts, and losing on both. Back in the game, the freighter drops him off. His destination is Churba 6, a remote, uninhabited moon. It's a desolate ball of grey rock, completely barren. No resources, no quests, no life, no reason for anyone to ever come here. It's perfect. He spends the last of his in-game credits to buy absolute, undisturbed silence, as the freighter's engines fade into the void. He is left utterly alone beneath the swirling, silent face of a colossal gas giant. The isolation is a physical weight, crushing him. He needs to reduce his corruption level. He sits and activates his Purify skill. The progress bar crawls across his screen at an agonizing pace. At this rate, he might clear 1% in 5 hours. He doesn't have 100 hours. He doesn't even have 15. Panic begins to set in, cold and sharp. Desperate, he pulls up the data chit Su Ling gave him. It holds everything she knew, everything she had figured out about him. The echoes recording, her analysis of the plague signatures, and her own meticulous notes on his unique abilities. One file catches his eye. Tagged Hypothesis, Synergistic Breakdown. Her theory was chillingly brilliant. His power growth isn't linear, it's logarithmic. To advance, he can't just devour more energy. He needs to devour energy of exponentially higher quality, higher potency. Devouring the Nexus core on Verdant Promise gave him a massive surge. But it was a reckless move that nearly destroyed him. He's walking a tightrope over an abyss. And Su Ling, the only person who understood the danger, the only one who could guide him, is now a prisoner. He tries to make a plan. The Dominion fortress where she's held, the Iron Asteria, is a legendary guild stronghold, a known meat grinder. A direct assault is suicide. His unique energy signature makes infiltration impossible. They detect him a million miles away. And negotiation. That's just walking into Vexor's trap. Every logical path, every strategic possibility, leads to a dead-end failure. The frustration, the guilt, the sheer helplessness, it all erupts. He lets out a raw, wordless scream that is instantly swallowed by the silent vacuum of the moon. A wild pulse of entropic touch explodes from him, blasting a 10-meter crater of dust into the ground. It's a pointless display of power that drains his precious energy and solves nothing. He's weaker now, and no closer to an answer. And as his energy dips, the corruption, now at 28%, makes its move. The grey dust in the crater begins to swirl, forming fleeting, glitch-like faces in the corner of his vision. He sees Mei. He sees Su Ling. He sees the echo. A whisper, not in his ears but directly in his mind, threads through his thoughts. Why struggle? Ikus. The void is peace. The end of all pain, all debt. To devour all is to be free of want. The logic is seductive, a sweet poison promising an end to his suffering. He slaps his own face, hard. The jolt of real-world pain is an anchor, pulling him back from the brink. No, he growls, to himself, to the whispers. I devour to protect, not to forget. He looks at the timer. 14 hours, 18 minutes, 33 seconds. Time is running out. He has a sister who needs a future he promised to buy her, and a friend who needs a present he's sworn to secure. He can't save them both by playing it safe. He can't save either of them. Su Ling's notes glow on his screen, the words practically leaping out at him. Synergistic breakdown. Quality over quantity. The void devour art is a paradox. To grow, you must consume that which can destroy you. His gaze lifts, sweeping across the barren moon. But he's not looking at the surface anymore. He's looking through it down. Into its heart. A plan begins to form. It's not a strategy born of hope or logic. It's a desperate, insane gamble, born of brutal necessity. This isn't a path to victory. It's a bet against oblivion itself. He walks to the center of the vast, silent plain. He closes his eyes. He reaches out with his senses, not to the empty space around him, but inward, downward. He pushes his awareness through miles of rock and dust, sensing the latent, geothermal energy of the moon's cold, dead core. It's not the vibrant chi of a living world. It's slow, ancient, and unbelievably massive, a sleeping giant. He won't just devour a monster or a machine. To gain the power he needs, he will devour a world, or he will be shattered into nothingness trying. He takes one last, deep breath, and begins to channel his void energy, a single, dark thread weaving its way down into the heart of the sleeping moon. Trying to devour the moon's energy was nothing like devouring a monster. It was agonizingly slow. Instead of a gushing fire hose of power, it was like a tiny, reluctant trickle seeping up through the rock into his feet. His devourability wasn't made for this. It was designed for distinct targets, not a whole planet. His energy was draining faster than it was refilling. It felt like trying to drink the ocean through a straw. After an hour of this futile effort, his energy reserves were critical. His corruption level hadn't budged, and he was completely exhausted. Failure was staring him right in the face, as he collapsed to his knees, defeated. He remembered his new tool, gravity. He'd been thinking like a thief, trying to steal the energy. He needed to think like a force of nature. He focused his mind, channeling his mastery over the law of gravity. Instead of pulling things toward him, he reversed the polarity. Pushing down, he created a narrow column of intense gravity right beneath him, compressing the moon rock, squeezing it like a sponge. And just like that, the trapped energy, forced from its ancient resting place, began to flow faster. Now, he combined the two forces. With one hand, he created a localized, high-gravity sinkhole, crushing the rock and priming it. With the other, he unleashed Devour on the super-compressed, energy-rich material. It was like switching from that tiny straw to a massive industrial pump. A torrent of dull, grey-brown energy, the very essence of stone, age, and pressure flooded into him. His energy reserves shot through the roof, skyrocketing to 200. then 300%. His meridians overloaded with raw, unrefined power, but it was tainted, not with plague, but with the sheer, crushing weight of dead rock. His corruption meter started to climb again, 29%, 30%. The world around him dissolved. He was no longer on a barren moon. He was lost in the memory stream of the stone itself. He witnessed eons of silent history, the cosmic impact that formed the crater he stood in, the slow death of the moon's magnetic field. The whispering voice from before returned, but now it was louder, layered with the grinding of continental plates. Yes, it rumbled. This is your nature. You are not a being. You are an event, a black hole. Consume, simplify, return all to quiet. A horrific vision flashed before his eyes. Himself, standing over May's cryotube, his hand dissolving it and her into peaceful nothingness. He recoiled in horror, his mind screaming. Amidst the geologic memories, other figures appeared. The original void devourers. They weren't echoes, but spectral impressions they'd left on reality itself. He saw them not as heroes, but as doomed sentinels, their minds eroded by the very power they wielded. They sat in silent meditation as cracks of foul plague light split their forms from within. One of them turned its hollow gaze toward him. Its thought wasn't a warning, but a chilling welcome. The silence awaits us all, brother. There is no death in the void. This was the true curse of his art. The path to power was a pilgrimage into madness. He was teetering on the edge. The energy was too much, too dense, its silence too loud. He had to choose, cut the connection and risk a catastrophic backlash, or push through and let his consciousness be assimilated by the stone's nihilism. Then, he remembered his other function, purify. He couldn't use it after. He had to use it now, at the same time. It was a desperate gamble. One part of his mind had to guide the devour, the other had to guide the purify, filtering the torrent of energy as it entered him. It was a mental feat akin to patting your head and rubbing your stomach while being waterboarded with entropy. The strain was unimaginable. Digital pain screamed along his nerves, but slowly, a terrible equilibrium formed. A cyclone of dead planetary energy swirled into him. At its core, a smaller, focused vortex of purify spun, stripping away the soul-crushing weight of the stone, leaving behind only pure, neutral void force. His cultivation base, the very framework of his power, began to fracture under the pressure, only to reforge itself stronger. The barrier to the next realm, long a stagnant wall, began to quake. He realized it wasn't a wall to be scaled. It was a sky to be devoured. The moon itself began to protest. Quakes rippled out from his position. The ground cracked, glowing with stolen energy. His body floated a meter in the air, caught in the vortex of his own making. His eyes were wide open, one pupil reflecting the swirling dust of the moon, the other a perfect, dead black. System messages blurred frantically across his vision. Void energy at 500%. Corruption at 35% and stabilizing. Meridian reconstruction in progress. Warning, avatar integrity at 65%. He was a bomb, about to detonate at the heart of a dying moon. The internal and external pressures were reaching a terrifying crescendo. Feng Zhu felt his soul scream, a soundless roar that echoed only within the confines of his own being. He was at the breaking point, pushing the dual-function process to its absolute, horrifying limit. He felt a moment of perfect, terrible silence descend. Then, it happened. An explosion of black light erupted from him. But it didn't blast outwards. Instead, it collapsed inwards, imploding into the very core of his existence, all the stolen, purified energy that he had desperately accumulated now condensed into a single, infinitely dense point within his Danshan. It was a personal void singularity. A black hole born within a man. And then, it ignited. System notifications flooded his vision. But they weren't the familiar gold he was used to. These were etched in lightless, Ominous silver. Congratulations. You have broken through the mortal coil. The heaven realm awaits. A new title flashed into existence. Heaven Shaker. The notifications continued, detailing the evolution of his abilities. Void Devour art has evolved. Devour efficiency increased. Purify capacity enhanced. Gravity law synchronicity, 45%. New function unlocked. Gravity well. The sheer weight of these new realities settled upon him. Not as a burden, but as a mantle of newfound power. As the blinding, inward-folding light faded, the scene around Fengju revealed the scale of what had just occurred. He stood in the center of a crater, kilometers wide, its surface a perfectly smooth, obsidian glass. The moon, Cerberus, was simply gone. In its place, the slowly expanding ring of debris orbited the distant gas giants. He was standing on the largest remaining piece, a floating island of rock adrift in the silent void. He was unharmed. In fact, he was more than unharmed. For the first time, in what felt like an eternity, he felt clear. The incessant, maddening whispering in his mind was gone. He checked his status. The corruption, once a raging storm threatening to consume him, was now a stable, managed 30%. In his veins, power hummed. Not the chaotic, violent tempest of before, but the deep, thrumming certainty of a tectonic plate, immense and unshakable. He slowly closed his fist, and the very space around his knuckles warped, bending light like a lens. His eyes fell upon a football-sized chunk of moon debris floating nearby. A test was in order. He didn't use Devour, his old crutch. Instead, he reached out with his hand and his will, activating his new, profound understanding of gravity. He didn't just pull the rock towards him, he rewrote the laws of physics for that tiny pocket of space. In less than 1/10 of a second, the rock was crushed into a dense, marble-sized sphere. Then, with a mere flick of his will, he sent it screaming into the distance. It impacted another, larger fragment, and both vaporized in a silent flash of pure kinetic energy. The power was instantaneous, brutally precise, and utterly devastating. He had moved beyond simply stealing energy from others. He now commanded the fundamental framework that contained it. With this new, terrifying clarity, he pulled up the countdown. 2 hours, 1 minute, and 47 seconds remained. But something had changed. The gnawing fear was gone. The raw desperation had vanished. In their place was a cold, stellar fury. He remembered Su Ling's capture, her face etched with fear. He remembered the Warden Vex's smug, condescending ultimatum. And he remembered the casual, almost bored way that Tyrannus had annihilated Kale, snuffing out a life as if it were nothing. He finally understood. They were playing a grand game of chess, moving their pieces across the board, sacrificing pawns without a second thought. But he was no longer a piece. He was becoming the earthquake that overturns the board itself. He accessed the data chit, pulling up the coordinates for the Dominion Fortress, the Iron Asteria. He had no ship. He didn't need one. Focusing his newfound heaven realm senses and his mastery over the gravity law, he began to bend space around himself. This wasn't a short-range teleport. He was plotting a sustained, personal slingshot trajectory across the vastness of the system. He calculated the vector, aimed his entire being at a distant star he would use as a gravitational anchor, and knelt down. He called the gravity of his small, rocky island like a compressed spring, drawing all of its mass and potential energy into a single point. With a final, controlled pulse of energy, the platform beneath him shattered into cosmic dust. Fengju was launched into the void. He was not a passenger in a vessel, he was the projectile. A human missile wrapped in a cocoon of warped spacetime, hurtling towards his destination at an impossible speed. His robes streamed behind him in a non-existent wind, the only sign of his colossal velocity. His eyes, glowing with the dark light of the void and fixed on the distant fortress, held the cold, hard promise of a reckoning. The episode ends here, on the silent, awe-inspiring image of his solitary figure, a tiny speck of defiant fury traversing the gulf of space under his own impossible power. A living comet headed for war. The calm is over. The storm is here. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the coming storm. See you next time.